next performer is a writer, performance artist, and storyteller. Tonight he's going to share with us some intimate details of growing up gay and dysfunctional in the Midwest. He calls his story like father, like son. Please welcome Tim Updike.
A queer is the lowest thing on the face of this earth. And if I ever find out you're one, I'll shoot you.
Oh, now, this was no idle threat coming from a man who carried a gun, a snub-nosed .38 in a shoulder holster, along with brass knuckles and a blackjack. Tommy was a tough guy. He grew up in Chicago during Prohibition and warfare, right across the street from the garage where Al Capone slaughtered half a dozen rivals in the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. He rode with a motorcycle gang that liked to get drunk, act tough, and roll queers. He was 21 years old. Just before she was 20, he met my mother in a dance hall in Indianapolis. They looked at each other. It was love at first sight. She was a beautiful natural blonde with bright blue eyes and stacked like Mae West. He was handsome. One hell of a good dancer, but my, what a temper. I remember one time watching him pick up a lawnmower in the front lawn and throwing it out in the street because it wouldn't start right away. Man had a temper. Tommy usually got whatever he wanted, but the one thing he did not want was a queer for a son. They had 2 daughters first, and then me, and then 5 years later, another girl. Everybody knew something was different about me about the time I was 4 years old. I could tell. I remember watching my brother-in-law, to-be, walking through the door of my sister's boyfriend, Jim, the first night he came to pick her up for their date for the prom. He was handsome and young, and I'd smile from ear to ear every time I saw him. When it came time for him to tell my sister goodnight and go over and give her a goodnight kiss, well, I'd line right up and pucker up for my kiss. He'd usually do it, you know. 16 years old and I was only 4, but he was a little embarrassed, but I kind of liked that. My 5th birthday, they bought me a baby doll that came with her own buggy. Right after my little sister was born, I'd be out there with my mom on the sidewalk. She'd be pushing the baby along. I'd be pushing my baby, learning how to be a good mother. My sister Nancy figured that she better do something. She was tomboy, captain of the girls' basketball team in high school, so she tried to teach me basketball, but I was just as femme as she was butch. I reacted by getting fat. So I was fat and femme. Tommy really hated that. Well, nonetheless, I never had much of a problem getting sex. I started having sex at the age of 12 with my boyfriend, Danny. A little 14-year-old, tan, muscular boy, lived down the street. I'd go over there every chance I could get, and then it was Steve and Mike and some other boys in the neighborhood. And then I met Joe. Well, by the time Joe and I graduated from high school, we'd been swapping blowjobs for about 2 or 3 years. One night we decided to do something really stupid. Joe, what did we do tonight? I don't know, what do you want to do? Well, I thought maybe we might want to go to Rucker Road. Okay, let's go. So we drove to this well-known makeout spot, parked the car. We were having the best time of our lives when all of a sudden we get busted by 2 Indiana State Troopers. Hey, look at what we got here. What's the matter? Don't you boys like girls or something? And they took us downtown. They towed my car, the car Tommy bought me for my 16th birthday, and they called their parents. My father came alone. He came busting into the police station, screaming at the top of his lungs, "Do I have a queer son?" Well, I had already decided my only option was total submission, so I broke into tears. I said, no. It wasn't like they said, we were just, making out with each other, and, we just... And he bought it. We drove home, me following in my little Volkswagen while he drove his big giant Cadillac. We never talked about it again. And then one night, about 4 months after that, it was a hot summer night, I was home alone and the telephone rings. Hello? Jimmy? Do you know what fuck means? Well, my father had never said anything like this to me before. I really didn't know quite how to respond, and I said, yeah, I know what it means. What? Well, listen, I got this hot bitch down here that wants to fuck you. You hear me? Yeah, I hear you. Okay, Timmy, now you get in your car and you drive on down here. You hear me? Yeah, Daddy, I hear you. Now you listen to me. Don't you go off in your shorts on the way down here, boy. My heart was beating so fast in my chest, I had to keep breathing deep just so I wouldn't pass out. I had this kind of feeling of terror and excitement all at the same time. I didn't know how this was going to turn out. Now, Tommy wasn't home very much. He was usually out carousing or working late, as he said. We didn't know this at the time, but my father was a part-time bookie. He owned a controlling interest in at least one whorehouse, and he could get you anything you wanted, from drugs to mink coats and diamond rings. But all we knew about was his 3 restaurants and the home improvement company. But when I got to his office, which was in an old converted house in a kind of a bad part of town, he was already waiting on the front porch. He had his shirt off and a drink in one hand, and he was kind of weaving from side to side. Come on up here, boy! I climbed up the steps and went inside and put his arm around me. We walked into his office, and there behind the desk was this door that I always thought was a closet. There was a light coming out of it, and we walked over to it. Walked inside and around the hallway, and there was a bedroom, and there she was, the hot bitch, at the end of the bed. She was wearing this little peekaboo see-through nightie with a little top, brunette, enormous tits. Over here on the wall was a fireplace with bottles on the mantel. My dad reaches up and takes a whiskey bottle off and pours me a drink and says, "Take off your shirt." So I did. He looks at Dixie and he says, now, Timmy just got back from Vietnam. Yeah, that's right. He's been over there for about 8 months fighting. Ain't that right, boy? Of course, this was all just for my benefit because the two of them, they had known each other for years. And she was a waitress in one of his restaurants and then worked as his secretary. So they knew each other. So she says, well, nice to meet you. Why don't you just slip off your clothes and join me? And I'm looking, and my dad is still in the room, and I'm getting a little drunk from the whiskey, and I don't know what's going on, but, I'm figuring I don't really give a shit what happens next. So I thought. But my father had some other ideas, and he said, Timmy, come over here a minute. He said, I'm going to take one side of this little nighty top here. He said, you take the other side. We just lift this up and look at these pretty titties together. No. Well, this made him kind of mad. He got kind of pissed off. He said, well, what the hell? Fortunately, Dixie spoke up. She said, now, Tommy, you get out of here, you big teaser. Just leave us alone. We'll have a good time. And with that, he decided he'd leave, but not before he turned to me and he said, now, look, boy. He said, you get down there. When I get back, I want you on top of that bitch fucking that pussy because I wanted to fuck it. And if you're not on there doing a good job, boy, I want to kick your ass. And out he goes. So Dixie's still there on the bed, kind of adjusting herself a little bit. She said, now, come on. Take off those clothes. And I thought, well, what the hell? I'd made out with girls before, but I'd never gone all the way. I thought maybe this was my chance, so I took off my clothes and I laid down beside her. She put one hand on my chest, put her leg over my crotch, and kind of rubbed a little bit. Didn't do anything. I was feeling the whiskey by this time, and I decided to come clean. I said, listen, I have to tell you, I've never been to Vietnam. I'm sorry, but the only reason my dad is doing this for me is because he thinks that I'm a homosexual, and I am homosexual. So we're not going to have sex. just looked at me and said, "Well, honey, that don't mean we don't have to have a good time, does it? We can just have a good time, can't we?" Well, try as she might, nothing happened. We just lay there and talked for a while, waiting for my dad to come back. And we decided between us we'd tell him what we had done, because we knew he would kill us both if we did. Suddenly there he was, back in the room, screaming at the top of his lungs, "Come on, Timmy, I gotta go downtown and get some of my boys out of jail." He turns to Dixie and he says, "Well, did you get it? Did you get it, Cherry?" She says, "Oh, yes, Tom, we got it. And off we go. We go running down the backyards of these houses next to us and up to the back door of one of them, totally unmarked. It was like a speakeasy in the 1930s. This little peephole opens and the man behind it says, "Oh, hi, Tommy." We walk inside. Now this next part is kind of hard to explain because suddenly there we were in this huge room. There was a roulette wheel over here and crap tables all around and about 200 people, and there was an orchestra playing dance music. And my dad just walks right up to this band leader, this black man that looked kind of like Duke Ellington, and just grabs him behind the neck like this and pulls him forward and gives him a big old sloppy wet kiss, big old French kiss. I could see their tongues touching. Right in front of everybody. And everybody just looked and they laughed and they applauded their love. That's about all I can remember. Years later, when my father went into the hospital for the last time, he gave my brother-in-law Jim, you know, the one I used to kiss goodnight. He gave my brother-in-law Jim a shoebox full of photographs. And he said, "Now I want you to burn these if I don't come home. Don't look at them, and don't let anybody else look at them." Well, my father died, and Jim burned the photographs. But before he did, he looked at every one of them. And he shared with me what was in that box. He said, "Timmy, there are pictures of your dad in there, most of them naked, having sex with men, women, children, and dogs." Well, shut my mouth. So here was a man who hated queers, no better than the lowest thing on the face of the earth. And suddenly, the truth was clear. Well, this man didn't hate me. He didn't hate me. He hated what he saw in me that he couldn't stand seeing in himself. And there I was, in his face all the time. He couldn't get away from me. And dogs, Jim? Yeah, dogs. So, Daddy, I'm sorry you had to keep all those things a secret. I really am. I think about you every now and then. And I think about your posing for those photographs and what that must have looked like. And I think to myself, damn, I wish I had those pictures.